Okay, let's picture this for a moment. You've got U.S. F-35s, these incredibly advanced stealth jets, suddenly deployed down in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
At the same time, warships, powerful Aegis destroyers, are gathering in the Caribbean, patrolling key sea lanes. And just a few days back, there was a U.S. strike. It took out an alleged drug boat, apparently linked to Venezuela, 11 people killed.
A really serious incident, and now you're seeing Venezuelan F-16s flying, well, dangerously close to U.S. Navy ships.
And the message from Washington is pretty stark. Do that again, and you'll be shot down.
Yeah, this isn't just, a minor spat. It feels like a direct escalation, a real confrontation. The U.S. is framing it as part of a war on drug cartels, but they're pointing fingers directly at Venezuela's leadership, specifically Nicolás Maduro.
The stakes feel incredibly high.
They really do.
And it's not just contained, is it? This seems to ripple outwards, affecting stability across South America, the Caribbean, and it's even pulling in global players. You mentioned Russia, China.
Absolutely. So today, we're diving deep into this high-stakes chess match playing out right now in the Caribbean. You've got U.S. military power facing off against Venezuelan defiance.
And it seems like the prize here is about much more than just oil.
Definitely. Our goal today is to unpack all this, these really complex, rising tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela. We need to understand the role drug trafficking plays in all this.
And how it destabilizes neighbors like Colombia and, brings in those other global powers.
Exactly. We'll try to cut through the noise, look at government statements, news reports, expert analysis, just give you the clearest picture we can without, drowning you in jargon.
Okay, let's start right there at the immediate flashpoint. This big U.S. military buildup and Venezuela's defiant response. The scale of the U.S. deployment alone seems noteworthy.
It really is. 10 F-35s operating out of Puerto Rico. These aren't just any jets. They're top-of-the-line stealth fighters. And their stated mission, targeting narco-terrorist organizations.
And the Navy's presence.
Equally impressive, or maybe concerning, depending on your view. At least 8 warships. That includes those Aegis-guided missile destroyers like the USS Jason Dunham. These ships are built for serious air defense.
Right.
Plus the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima, and we know there's at least one nuclear-powered fast attack submarine involved.
And boots on the ground, too.
Yeah.
Or sailors and Marines.
Yeah, over 4,500 U.S. Marines and sailors. They're running intensive, realistic training drills down in southern Puerto Rico. I mean, the message couldn't be clearer. This is a major military commitment.
Focused, they say, on drug trafficking and groups tied to Venezuela.
That's the stated purpose.
And it's not just drills. That September 2nd strike was real. A U.S. operation destroyed an alleged drug boat.
The one reportedly coming from Venezuela, operated by the Tren de Aragua gang.
Which is a pretty notorious Venezuelan criminal group known for crossing borders, drugs, human trafficking, a nasty outfit. And 11 people died in that strike.
And President Trump's response was immediate and blunt. He defended it as a notice, basically, to anyone thinking of bringing drugs into the U.S.
And the legal cover for that.
The U.S. had designated Tren de Aragua as a terrorist organization earlier in the year. That designation is key.
How so?
Well, it's not just a label. Legally, it opens the door for much broader actions like asset freezes, sanctions. It really hits Venezuela's financial legs and makes any kind of negotiation much harder. It's a significant tool in, well, economic warfare.
And Venezuela's reaction. Predictably strong, I imagine.
Yeah. Maduro called it a blistering attack. He used some really strong language.
Yeah.
Extremist, Nazi current, extravagant, unjustifiable, immoral, and absolutely criminal and bloody threat. Really dialing up the rhetoric.
And backing it up with military moves.
Definitely. They mobilized their own forces, deployed warships, drones. They activated something called a permanent enlistment system, the Patriot system they call it.
Which sounds like preparing for a fight.
It signals maximum preparedness. That's the term they used. And that's when we saw those Venezuelan F-16s flying provocatively near the USS Jason Dunham, multiple times apparently, in international waters.
Which led directly to Trump's warning about shooting them down.
Exactly. It's a really dangerous game of chicken. Each side pushing harder, reacting more strongly. It just shows how adversarial this relationship has become.
Okay, so we have military moves, threats. What about the underlying accusations? The U.S. has been very vocal about Venezuela and drugs for a while now.
Relentless is a good word. It goes back to at least March 2020, when Maduro himself and other top officials were formally indicted in the U.S. on narco-terrorism charges.
Right, yeah, I remember that.
And then a really critical move happened on July 25th, 2025. The U.S. Treasury designated the Cartel de los Soles,
The Cartel of the Suns.
Yes, which the U.S. alleges Maduro leads. They designated it a specially designated global terrorist organization.
That sounds serious. What does that designation actually do?
Again, it's more than symbolic. It triggers a whole new layer of sanctions, financial pressure. It makes it incredibly difficult for anyone to do business with entities linked to it. And the pressure didn't stop there.
The bounty.
Exactly. August 7th, 2025, the reward for information leading to Maduro's arrest was doubled to $50 million.
$50 million, wow.
Yeah. So the U.S. narrative is crystal clear. They see Maduro's government as the kingpin of a drug narco state, actively helping groups like Tren de Aragua.
That's a very strong claim.
Right.
But Venezuela paints a totally different picture, right?
Yeah.
They deny everything.
Vehemently. Maduro's government insists Venezuela is free of cocoa plantations, free of cocaine production. They even claim they've taken down 402 drug trafficking aircraft since 2015.
They say that's due to a modern law passed back then. Is there evidence for any of this, or is it just claim versus counterclaim?
Well, getting independent verification is really tough in this kind of charged environment, but Maduro doesn't just deny. He points fingers elsewhere, specifically at Ecuador. He alleges Ecuador has become a major base of operations for drug trafficking. He claims 60% of Colombian cocaine is now moving through Ecuadorian ports.
That's a huge accusation against a neighbor.
And he gets specific. He's implicated Ecuador's president, Daniel Noble, and even his family's banana export business, suggesting they're involved in smuggling cocaine to Europe and the U.S.
Wow. So incredibly strong counterclaims. It just shows how tangled and accusatory this whole thing is. Hard to know what's real without solid, independent proof.
Exactly. It becomes a war of narratives.
Let's shift focus slightly to Colombia, a key player, often caught in the middle of all this regional tension. It feels like Colombia is at a real crossroads right now.
It really is. They're juggling multiple crises at once. There have been mass social protests, serious fiscal problems, that long-running armed conflict still simmers, plus the ongoing effects of the pandemic.
And the socioeconomic situation sounds dire for many.
It is. You look at the numbers from 2020, 37.5% of Colombians below the poverty line. Over 2/3 of households making less than $600 a month. High unemployment, especially for young people and women. These are real grievances.
And on top of that, the conflict. It never really went away.
Well, not entirely. Almost 50 years of conflict, over 260,000 deaths. It leaves deep scars. And even with the 2016 peace deal with the main FARC group, you have FARC dissidents, the FARC-D and the ELN guerrilla groups still active. They're regrouping.
And involved in cities now, too, not just rural areas.
Yes, that's a key shift. They're involved in what some call urban terrorism, blocking roads, disrupting supplies in cities like Cali, and they're operating near strategic ports like Buenaventura on the Pacific coast, likely overseeing illicit drug flows.
So you have this internal instability, these real grievances, and then allegations that outside forces are stirring the pot.
That's the really worrying part. There are claims that legitimate protests are being, quote, co-opted as tools of asymmetric warfare.
Asymmetric warfare. Using protests as a weapon, essentially.
Kind of. Using non-traditional tactics, leveraging civil discontent to destabilize a country. And the fingers point towards illicit armed groups, urban terrorists, allegedly linked to Venezuela, Cuba, even Iran.
Any specific examples?
Well, there's Diosdado Cabello. He's a powerful figure in Maduro's regime. He apparently called the 2019 protests in Colombia a Bolivarian breeze blowing from Venezuela.
Implying they're orchestrating it, or at least fanning the flames.
That's the suggestion. And there are reports that groups in Colombia, like the La Primera Línea protest groups, receive training in agitation and propaganda.
And social media plays a role.
A huge role. There was a study looking at the 2019 protests in Chile, actually, which found that a tiny fraction of users, less than 1%, mostly based in Venezuela, generated almost 1/3 of the online content that was fueling violence.
Wow. So it suggests a coordinated effort to destabilize using social media and potentially on-the-ground agitators.
It points to a sophisticated, multi-layered approach using genuine discontent for potentially larger strategic aims.
Okay, so it's not just the U.S. and Venezuela. We've mentioned Russia, China, Iran. Let's look closer at their roles in this tangled web. Russia, first, you said they have an expanding footprint.
They do. In Colombia, for instance, they had alleged military intelligence activities that got some of their diplomats expelled back in December 2020.
Hmm.
And Colombian airspace has apparently been violated repeatedly by Russian-made military drones flying from Venezuela.
And Russia's ties to Maduro are pretty solid.
Very solid.
Right.
Russia's sold Venezuela over $11 billion in weapons since 2005. They still have military advisors on the ground there. It's not just about arms deals. It's about maintaining a strategic presence, a military foothold, really, right in America's neighborhood. It definitely complicates any U.S. plans.
And China. How are they involved?
China's approach is maybe more economic and political, but it's a direct challenge to the traditional U.S.-Colombia partnership. They won the contract to build the Bogota Metro, for example.
Which sounds like normal infrastructure development, but what's the concern?
The concern is influence. Control over critical national infrastructure, like a major city's metro system, gives you leverage, potential intelligence access. It's a strategic foothold.
And they use other leverage, too.
Yes, things like vaccine diplomacy, using supplies of their Sinovac vaccine, reportedly, to push for Huawei's involvement in Colombia's 5G network auctions.
Right. And China also helps Venezuela bypass sanctions.
Crucially, China's described as the linchpin for chartering ships that move sanctioned gasoline from Iran to Venezuela. And something like 20% of Venezuela's oil exports go to China, which is a vital economic lifeline for Caracas, helping them dodge U.S. sanctions.
Okay, and Iran. You mentioned their presence is more stealth.
Yeah, perhaps less overt than Russia or China, but there are still serious concerns. Disinformation campaigns, potential links to those armed groups in Colombia, the FARC-D and ELN.
Have those links been proven?
There's evidence suggesting that both the ELN and FARC-D have actively sought logistical and material support from Iran and even tried to establish sort of diplomatic ties.
That sounds like more than just casual contact.
It does. And the big security worry is potential weapons transfers between Venezuela and Iran, especially given Maduro's known links to groups like Hezbollah, as well as ELN and FARC-D.
And layered over all of this is disinformation.
Exactly. Sophisticated campaigns using things like click farms, networks of people paid to generate fake online activity, sometimes based as far away as Bangladesh and armies of troll accounts.
Oh, what?
At pouring fuel on the fire, exacerbating protests, spreading lies, undermining trust in democratic institutions across the whole region.
Okay, this is a deeply complex and worrying picture. So, given all these intertwined problems, what are the possible ways forward? Are there recommendations for stabilizing things, particularly for a key partner like Colombia?
Well, the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, put forward a set of recommendations specifically focused on U.S. support for Colombia.
Okay, what do they suggest? Let's be clear, these are their recommendations we're reporting on.
Right. One major point is strengthening security assistance. That means things like boosting support for Colombian police and military, especially near that volatile Venezuelan border.
And technology.
Yes, providing better tech assistance for strategic spots, like the port of Buenaventura, which is so critical for stopping illicit trafficking.
Makes sense. What about the economic side? Security and economy often go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Heritage recommends expanding trade and investment, reinforcing the existing U.S.-Colombia Free Trade Agreement, finding new ways to help small and medium businesses cooperate.
And infrastructure investment. China's active there, as you said.
Exactly. They suggest prioritizing investments from the U.S. and Western European private sectors, focusing on projects that address both security and economic growth, especially in those isolated regions that can become breeding grounds for trouble.
So competing with China's influence, basically.
In part, yes. They also recommend helping Colombia protect sensitive communications and keep a closer eye on Russian intelligence activities.
And the 5G issue with Huawei.
That's another specific point. They advise monitoring Colombia's 5G auction process closely to ensure it's fair and ethical, and importantly, offering viable alternatives to Chinese companies like Huawei.
Okay, what else? Disinformation. Pandemic recovery.
Both are mentioned. They recommend identifying and helping legitimate civil society groups in Colombia push back against hostile foreign disinformation campaigns. And also, working closely with Colombia on pandemic recovery, including vaccine help, while keeping an eye on China's use of vaccine diplomacy.
All right. let's try and pull this all together. It's been a really intense deep dive. We've seen this aggressive U.S. counter-drug stance ramping up in the Caribbean.
Right, clashing directly with Venezuela's defiance.
We've looked at how the drug trade is deeply tangled up with regional instability, especially in Colombia, which is dealing with its own crises.
Crises potentially made worse by outside meddling.
And then there's the layer of global power plays, Russia, China, Iran, all pursuing their own interests in the region.
It's crucial to understand these dynamics, you know. They affect global power balances, trade routes, even the flow of drugs reaching markets worldwide. This isn't just some isolated regional issue.
It really isn't. It has ripple effects for international security, for the health of democracies, way beyond South America.
So what does this mean for you, listening? It means staying aware of these complex layers, the military posturing, the economic pressures, the geopolitical games, because they genuinely shape the world we live in, from local communities affected by drug trade to global alliances.
And it leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it?
It does. In a region already struggling with so much economic hardship, so much internal division, is this escalating military pressure the right tool? Is it necessary to break up criminal networks, or does it just risk sparking a much bigger fire?
A wider conflict that could destabilize the entire hemisphere for decades. It's a heavy thought to end on.